Good evening. I'll call the Common Council to order this evening, and Holly will call the roll.
Bartlett.
Here.
Hirsch.
Here.
Swadley.
Here.
Boersma.
Here.
Johnson. Reeves.
Here.
Majewski.
Here.
Engelberger.
Here.
Jensen.
Here.
O'Connor.
Here.
Duranzik.
Here.
And Truel is absent and excused.
Thank you. I'd like to start this evening by drawing your attention to, at the table in front of you, you'll see an article from the Stoughton Courier Hub called "The Legislature Honors Stoughton High School's Bourmet." And this is a, not to be outdone by the legislature, I thought we as the city of Stoughton should also honor Ian. So he has been recognized as the Prudential Spirit of Community Award. So however effective government may be in serving the needs of its citizens, the soul of our city and its vitality as a place to live and work depend on the relationships of families, friends, and neighbors. Strengthening those bonds is not as much in the hands of institutions or governments as it is in the hearts of the people, individuals who volunteer to help people of all ages, races, and religions cope with illness, overcome hardship and barriers, adjust to social changes, and fulfill their potential. These volunteers are unrecognized, unsung heroes of our society. Ian Bourmet was recently named as one of our state's top honorees in the 2018 Prudential Spirit of Community Awards program, exemplifying the value of volunteer community service and is a role model to other youth as well as adults in our community. A surprising number of volunteers in communities across the nation are like Ian, a student contributing time without expectation of reward, other than the gratification that comes from helping others. Some of these young people work in established groups, others seek new and unique ways to help others on their own. Recognizing these young volunteers and encouraging others to follow their example is the aim of the nationwide program conducted by the Prudential Financial and the National Association of Secondary School Principals. Its aim is to reach into every community in all 50 states and the District of Columbia to identify and honor these unsung heroes locally, state by state, and then nationally in the hopes that their recognition will serve to stimulate others to volunteer service. I, Donna Olson, Mayor of the City of Stoughton, on behalf of our city, commend Ian Bourmet, our Prudential Spirit of Community Award honoree, for his outstanding volunteer contribution to others and to our community. And for those that might not remember Ian, will, as soon as I start, read to you just for a minute longer, if I can, about what Ian has done. Ian is 17 years old. He's a triathlete senior here at Stoughton High School with a 3.96 GPA. He worked for 2 months to design and build a 3D printed prosthetic arm, benefiting a young boy here in Stoughton who was born without a hand and wouldn't be fitted for a long-term prosthetic one until he was done growing. Ian worked with the boy to customize the design of the arm. He also interned at a research institute over the summer where he helped with a program that prints prosthetic arms for other children and adults. Ian was recently named one of the top youth volunteers in Wisconsin for the 2018 and the 23rd Annual Prudential Spirit of Community Awards. As a distinguished finalist in this year's program, he'll receive an engraved bronze medallion. So the other thing that Ian has done is he's taught this young boy, knowing that soon Ian will be going to college, he's taught this young man how to print his own arm. So while he won't get a prosthetic arm for many years yet until he's fully grown, he can go into the high school's fab lab and print his own arm as he grows and have more use. So I think that's something to really be commended. So thank you to Ian, and good luck. I'm sure he's got a bright future ahead. So going from bright futures to historic past, Richard Montgomery is here to talk about the 110th anniversary of our Stoughton Library.
Thank you, Mayor Olson. Ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to mention that earlier this month we celebrated the 110th anniversary of the Stoughton Public Library building. The library itself was started in 1901, the building in 1908, and I left on at your places an article from the 1908 Stoughton Courier Hub, as it was called. One day, the formal opening of the new library, and the next day afterward, good speeches and fine music. So that's what I wanted to bring to your attention, and thank you very much.
Thank you, Richard. Do we have older persons wishing to speak this evening? Seeing none, we do have a couple of folks that have registered to speak. Sharon Mason Boersma at 243 East McKinley Street. Welcome, Sharon.
Thank you, Mayor Olson. I am here to talk about an event that is coming up on Tuesday, April 17th from 6 to 8 p.m. at the Covenant Lutheran Church here in Stoughton on North Van Buren Street. I handed out all of you these cards about this event. It's sponsored by a coalition called Stoughton Cares that raises community awareness to prevent underage drinking and substance abuse. And we are putting this on, coordinating this event again in Stoughton. And I just want to give you some quick statistics about mental health and addictions. Depressing statistics. Wisconsin has the highest drunk driving rate in the United States. It has the highest rate for binge drinking from 18 to 22-year-old males. 12 out of 20 of the drunkest cities in America are in Wisconsin. 8% of adults have a substance abuse disorder, and 40% of individuals with mental or substance use disorders get treatment. Of those, less than 1/3 get adequate treatment. So what are opioids? They're a man-made drug: heroin, oxycodone, hydrocodone, morphine, codeine, fentanyl. They're pain relievers for many, but they're also addictive. And when used for dependency or mixed with other chemicals, they can cause extreme sickness and death. In 2016, more than 4,000 Wisconsin seniors were hospitalized for opioid dependency or poisoning. In 2016, 827 people in Wisconsin died from opioid overdoses, and more than the number of people who died in car crashes. Overdose deaths due to prescription opioids are up 600% from 2000 to 2016. I just want to again inform you of this event. And on April 17th, Stoughton will look at this issue and this crisis through a family approach. We are having guest speaker come from the East Coast, Emily Feinstein. She's the executive vice president from the National Center on Addiction and Substance Abuse, and she is a colleague for Joseph Califano, who once was the U.S. Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, and he wrote this book, How to Raise a Drug-Free Kid, which is our family approach in this issue. We are also excited about having local representatives from different agencies, organizations, counseling agencies, law enforcement, and other case management services, prevention services, also be there. Stoughton Hospital, Stoughton Police Department, the START program, the Affordable Transportation Program, some counseling agencies, the Parent Addiction Network, other agencies that have agreed to do this. And they will have booths in the lobby foyer area of Covenant Lutheran Church on this date. They will be there at 6 o'clock. Our speaker will be speaking from 6:30 to 7:30, and then people also can go back and talk to the people at the booths if they wish. We will be offering free lock boxes for prescription medications, as well as a free copy of this book. We will also have food available, and each participant that comes, we hope to get over 100 people at least. It's free. Anybody from any community can come, and we will give them a packet of information on this crisis. So we hope you will spread the word. We hope we have your support. We thank the city. We thank all of the people that are helping us coordinate this event. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Sharon. And next registered is Peggy Varigan at 225 North Monroe Street.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Peggy Varigan. I'm here as the chair of the Landmarks Commission. I'm here to offer my support to R63 2018, which is the local landmark designation of South School. The reason you're seeing this tonight is because, well, while it's been long understood that South School is a locally designated landmark in the city, commonly known and recognized by the city, the Landmarks Commission, and the owners of the building. Due to an incomplete record of this building being nominated as a local landmark, the Commission agreed to submit a new nomination for public hearing and council consideration to ensure the record is accurate and complete. Further, local landmark designation was requested by the owners of the property through the condominium association. At our public hearing, we had guests, including multiple members of the condominium board, who expressed support of the nomination, as well as a neighbor who also expressed support of the nomination. Thank you very much. If you have any questions about the school or want me to talk about the school, I can.
All right, thank you, Peggy.
Thank you.
Our consent agenda this evening consists of the March 13, 2018 council minutes. It also consists of Resolution 52, 2018, which is a resolution authorizing and directing the proper city officials to issue an operator license to Abby Vacay at Naughty Norski. I would entertain a motion to approve the resolution.
So moved.
Second. Motion by Jensen, second by Hirsch.
I don't care.
Oh, I'm sorry, was it Duranzik?
Well, we
I'm
said
sorry,
it at the
thank
same
you.
time. You were just a little bit
Thank
louder
you.
than I was.
I heard it that direction, thanks Denise. Does any older person wish to remove an item from that agenda? Make any correction to those minutes? Seeing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Old business begins this evening with Ordinance 9 of 2018. This comes from our Public Safety Committee. Alderperson Jensen. Surprise, Scott's not here tonight.
Okay, unprepared. Ordinance 9, 2018, ordinance amending Section 70 of the Stoughton Municipal Code to create Section 70-202, granting authority to the police chief and Public Works Director to designate temporary parking and vehicle movement restrictions on city streets as deemed necessary, and I would so move.
Second.
It's a motion by Jensen, second by Duranzik. Alderperson Jensen.
Again, this, I believe, Chief, was cleaning up some questionable
Makes the language explicit.
Maintenancing. Yes, I'll let you.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what it does, is it makes the language explicit. It gives the, myself and the Public Works Director the authority to temporary post no parking and control movement on city streets as we deem necessary to accommodate a number of things, including hazardous conditions or so forth.
Thank you.
Because the way we were doing it before, it was ordinance by ordinance, and so we still had things on the books that needed to be removed, and this cleans it all up.
Right.
Right, thank you. Comments or questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Ordinance 10 of 2018 also comes before us this evening for a second reading from our Utilities Committee. Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ordinance 10, 2018, ordinance to amend Chapter 74 of the City of Stoughton Code of Ordinances relating to utilities and sewer use, and I so move.
Second.
Motion by Engelberger, second by Hirsch. Alderperson Engelberger.
I'm going to turn it over to Utilities Director Cardez.
Okay, we refer to this as the fog ordinance, but it's fats, oil, and grease is what we're talking about. And what we're trying to do is we're trying to keep them out of the sanitary sewer collection system. It's actually a requirement of the regulatory agencies, so we're being a bit proactive here. And what it'll do is it'll allow us to work with folks with grease traps and so forth, again, to properly maintain and operate them, and again, keep them out of the sewer system and keep them out of the wastewater plant.
Thank you. Comments or questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. New business begins with Resolution 53 of 2018 from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 53, 2018, awarding the sale of, the resolution calls for $12,565,000. It's actually $12,585,000. due to a change that Mr. Murray can explain. General obligation corporate purpose bonds, Series 2018A. Finance Committee met tonight and approved it unanimously.
There's a motion by O'Connor. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Duranzik. Alderperson O'Connor.
These are to fund the Public Works Building and refinance the NANs from KPW. Mr. Murray is here to explain it further. The rates were very favorable, so recommend approval.
Thank you. Finance Director Laborde or Joe Murray? Welcome.
Good evening. Joe Murray from Springstead, proud to be the city's financial advisor. Yes, you did receive some very good news today on the bond sale of both the 2018 A's and B's. I'll focus first on the A's. As was noted, this is to finance your construction of the Public Works facility and the refinance along the 2015 note anticipation notes. That was for the public improvements for Kettle Park West Phase 1. The plan had always been at that time, if you recall, we did the note anticipation notes so that it would provide some time for KPW to put the development in the ground and see what the increment would be, and then we would structure it to take it out long for the entire term of the TID district so that it would have no potential impact on city taxes. As part of the process for the debt issue, we went through a credit rating process. I'm pleased to let you know that your AA2 credit rating with Moody's was affirmed. You've been there quite some time. It's reflective of your proximity to Madison and strong economy, as well as your own strong economy and growing tax base within the city, as well as healthy reserves. So it's the third highest credit rating that's out there, and you should be very proud of it. Based on getting the good bids, or a good rating, we received 6 bids on the 2018 A's today. The low bid came in from Piper Jaffray at a true interest cost of 3.09%. We had projected it would come in at 3.46%, so it saves 37 basis points. What does that mean for you? The good news is that the net interest cost of the city will be $533,676 less than what we had projected. So very good news based on the bids for the 2018 A's. Also, there was very strong competition. 5 of the bids came within 10 basis points of the low bid, and all of them came under what we had projected. So there was a lot of interest and good competition, and would recommend that you award, I'm sorry, I forgot the change in the dollar amount. Originally, this was going to be an issue of $12,565,000. As part of the refunding for the note anticipation notes, you can't borrow more money than you need, but obviously you need to borrow as much as you need to so you can pay off the bonds that are the notes that are due in October. When we had structured this, we anticipated it would receive a premium bid, which is where the underwriter provides cash up front to the city to pay down the net interest cost. We were using some of that cash to reduce the size of the borrowing because we weren't going to need it. The premium we received was not as large as what we had projected. That is good news, and that is reflected in the lower interest rates and the savings that you have throughout. But without having as big of a premium as we projected, we didn't have enough money in the refunding. So we had to increase the amount we needed to borrow for the refunding by that $20,000. So the new size of the borrowing, the bonds, is $12,685,000. The terms are, as I discussed, and I recommend that you award the 2018 A's to Piper Jaffray at a true interest cost of 3.09%, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Alderperson Boersma.
Thank you, Your Honor. As all of you know, I've consistently voted against the new facility. Not that we don't need it, but I think we need other things in the city. I think it's a lot of money to fund a public works facility. And so I'm on a horns of dilemma, or between the devil and the deep blue sea, or between a rock and a hard place, because I think we really need money for some other projects. So I had thought about just abstaining from this vote, but I think that would be sort of gutless, and so I will be voting against it. And I probably would be the only one, but I think we have to be very careful as a city as to borrowing money for something like this when we can use some borrowing for some other some other issues and that we're faced with as a city. So I will be voting against this.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to vote in favor of this, but the one question I do have is with the savings, the 500,000, what, is that money that's set aside, or what, maybe, Tammy, you can tell me what that's,
Actually, it's an amount then that we won't
Designated
have to
for.
levy for. These are all based on the projections that they had presented initially, and
is it
so. since
budgeted though?
I'm sorry?
Is it budgeted?
The actual first payment won't take place until 2019, so
Okay.
that'll be included in next year's budget. And it won't have to be as much as we had thought.
Okay.
Alderperson Johnson. I second what Alderperson Borsman says, and I think all of you know how I feel about KPW. I don't think we should have gone into debt for them at all, so I'll be voting no against this. Thank you. Further comments?
Mayor?
Sure, Tammy.
I just wanted to point out that the funding of the borrowing, the refinancing for the KPW, the note, anticipation notes, all of the debt premium and interest is anticipated to be covered by increment. And because of the success of that district, right now the increment is scheduled to cover the debt payments that will need to be made annually. So that will not have to be included in the city's annual debt figures. And as Mr. Murray says, it's about $80,000.
Thank you. Alderperson Borsman.
And just one further clarification on my position. I've talked to a number of people both in my district and in the city at large, and a number of people have asked me, how can you afford it? And so I'm doing it both based on my heart feeling on it, but I'm also based on a number of people who have come up to me and have questioned the prudence of borrowing this kind of money for a new public facility. Realizing that we have to house our trucks and care for the people who work there, have a nice place to be, but I think I'm not the only one in the city who is concerned about how much money we're spending on such a project.
Sure. Thank you. Council President Swadley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I certainly understand your concerns and the concerns of your constituents. We're in the same district. Building the Public Works building does a lot of things for us. It clears up the land on the riverfront that we want to develop. So I think it's important to move forward on it. And we know we're going to be putting up the building anyway. We made the investment in the land several years ago, and we deferred maintenance on the current building in anticipation of it being removed. And we also know that the longer we wait to build a new building, the cost will continue to rise at 3 to 5% a year. So I definitely would, support approving this, and I think that in the long run, it's actually going to be more financially responsible.
Thank you. We'll vote by roll call.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Swadley,
Aye.
Boersma,
No.
Johnson,
No.
Reeves,
Aye.
Mieski,
Aye.
Engelberger,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
O'Connor,
Aye.
Durantic,
Aye.
Bartlett.
Aye.
That motion carries on a vote of 9-2. Resolution 54 of 2018 also comes from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 54, 2018, authorizing the issuance and sale of $775,000 of taxable general obligation promissory notes, Series 2018B. Finance Committee met tonight and approved it unanimously. I move approval.
Second.
Thank you. Motion by O'Connor, second by Swadley. Alderperson O'Connor.
This money is to be used to raise and mediate or remediate the highway trailer building property. And so, again, I guess Mr. Murray can explain further on the rates.
Thank you very much. Yes, this is the second part of the borrowing that came about very quickly at one of your recent meetings when to move forward on the removal of the highway trailer building. At that time, you approved $750,000. You'll notice that the borrowing is for $775,000. That is for additional cost of issuance associated with financial advisor, being me, bond counsel, and a rating. On an issue this small, I would not have recommended to add it for a competitive bid if it was standalone, but since we were in the market already and you had an official statement and the ratings and the opinions and everything were in process, it was easy just to pick up this small little bit and only put a portion of the cost back onto this borrowing. If it wasn't, if it was a standalone, I would have recommended that you go to the State Trust Fund loan program and do it without, which wouldn't have to pay for any cost of issuance. But we also were a little bit deviant from what the State Trust Fund would have liked to do, and that we structured this for the first 3 years to be interest only, to buy you some time for a developer to come in and potentially redevelop it, buy that site from the city and redevelop it, as opposed to having to stay on the tax roll. It's issued as 10-year promissory notes. It's done on a taxable basis in that the expectation and hope is that you will be able to sell it for private development in the future. The true interest cost came in at 3.23% from BOK Financials. And I forgot to mention, there's a blue handout with the details I'm speaking to at your places. BOK Financial, that's Baco, Oklahoma. This came in at also 37 basis points below what we had expected and saved $11,000 from what we had projected when we were told to proceed with trying to do this financing. At the time, I had also spoke with Tammy to say that if we didn't receive good bids, I would recommend against this and tell you to go to the State Trust Fund loan if it would be save the city money. I am pleased to report that the State Trust Fund would be at a 4% interest rate, and this borrowing at a competitive, even with the additional $25,000 for cost of issuance, will save the city more than $10,000. So would recommend that you award the sale of the 2018 Bs in the amount of $775,000 to BOK Financial Services at a true interest cost of 3.23%. And I'd be happy to answer questions you have on that.
Thank you. Alderperson Boersma.
Thank you much, Your Honor. So, as I understand it, this is going to be used for the tear down of the highway trailer building. And I had a question. I was at Parkland when the vote was taken to do that, and I was in favor of that vote. But I just wonder if we need to do more in terms of that area. For instance, if the Foundry building or the whatever building needs to come down to, where we get that money to add to it, or can we borrow more, or what? Because we really don't know the full condition of that whole structure. So
I can answer that. The anticipated cost would be $700,000 per the quote that we received, and that was excluding the blacksmith shop, which is what the vote was. The rest of the complex would be taken down. So we anticipated about $50,000 for any remediation that may be necessary at the site. Beyond that, for the blacksmith shop, based on what happens, we don't have any funding currently set aside for that specifically.
Thank
so
you.
we're kind of guessing a little bit, just in terms of whether or not that building is going to be salvageable.
We don't know.
Thank you. Alderperson Hirsch, Swadley, and then Johnson.
On the opposite side of that, Councilperson Boersma's comment, what happens can we pay it off earlier? Is there a penalty to paying off earlier? Just say if we did, because I know there is a grant that Gary's looking into that we can apply for now that would be close to, say, $500,000. If we are awarded that, can we actually pay it off earlier so we are not borrowing so much?
Joe's actually looking that up. There's a time period,
Yeah,
right?
you can prepay this in 2026.
So we still have to wait for almost 8 years to...
Yes, it's got an 8-year call provision on it. If you
Okay.
wanted to, you could always put the money into escrow, set it aside that way, but you couldn't officially take it out of the hands of the investors until 2026.
Thank you. Alderperson Swadley, and then Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. So on this building, first of all, I wanted to thank Tammy and Joe for the quick turnaround on this. Tammy and I had talked about this on a weekend when Alderperson Jensen sent out his resolution. So kudos for turning that around and saving us some money and giving us some options. And I just wanted to point out, and even with all this borrowing, we're still going to be below our borrowing policy, which is 4%. And I've been assured that as we proceed at the riverfront development, we'll still have enough capacity to borrow to take care of any needs that we might have for public improvements down there to get that project going.
Thank you. Alderperson Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. This question might go to, actually, Regina. So do we have to get the full, can we wait to find out if we can get the grant money first before we go with the whole amount of the $775,000?
That's not what the council voted on, unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay, I will be voting against this because I think we're throwing away money, like $500,000, if we can get the grant. So I think that is very irresponsible that we didn't vote that way in the first place. So very disappointed that we haven't looked into getting the grant money to let the state help pay for it. And whether we want the building or not, I'd rather have someone else pay for tearing it down. Thank you.
Thank you. Tammy, I'll have Tammy respond first.
One thing that I could say is that if we do get the grant, we would utilize those funds, and any remaining funds could be reprogrammed for some other function at the site, or, as Joe mentioned, put those funds aside for future payment at the time that we can pay off the entire loan. But that's 2016. 2026, actually. Right, and that's 8 years. That's going to be on our books. So that doesn't matter to what I was trying to do.
Okay, thank you. Council President Swabel.
Thank you. So I guess I was kind of make the same point is we know we're going to be doing some other borrowing down there on the public improvements. So if we receive the grant, I'm sure there's going to be a way we can utilize all the funds. So I don't think it's going to be money wasted. I think actually at some point we would have to have borrowed for the public improvements anyway. So if we get the grant, I'm sure our finance people will figure out a way for us to be able to utilize that for the project.
Thank you. Alderperson Boersma.
And just two questions of Joe. And one is, if we borrow that kind of money, can we use that money for other purposes? Is it restricted to potentially to this use?
Yes, you're borrowing it specific. You couldn't move this to finance a program in the general fund. You couldn't buy police.
Okay, and then the other question is to somebody else. I'm not sure if Joe can answer this, but whether if we borrow that kind of money, does that make it more difficult to get a grant for money for this purpose? I wonder if the grantors of that additional money or the money that we're seeking in grant money, whether or not because we have the money borrowed, whether that would impede our ability to get a grant.
I can't speak to the grant program. I'm not familiar with the rules.
Thank you. Alderperson Hirsch.
I think if I remember right, maybe Tammy, if you remember too, what Gary said with respect to that grant, that it could be used for the demo, but it also could be used for other public improvements on that site,
I think,
as well as like some of the trails or the Whitewater Park as well. But to go with you, Joe, if we don't use the full amount for a demo, we can use that money that we're borrowing on that site. We just can't use it for the police. We have to use it on that site. It doesn't necessarily have to be just for the demo of the highway trailer building.
We wrote it for demolition, removal, and remediation of the highway trailer building located in the city. So on the site, yes.
So it could be that whole site. So if when the public works building needs demo, we could also use it, any remainder money for that, because that's on the same site, or not?
I think that would be more of a stretch because that's a public improvement. This is being done on a taxable basis because the anticipation that you're going to sell whatever you clean on that site for future development.
Well, the Public Works,
The Public Works building.
current Public Works is going to be coming down for a public improvement.
Oh, I'm sorry, I thought we were talking
No,
about
no, no,
the
no, not the
facility.
new one,
It's
but
for
the,
the riverfront area that
Oh,
she's
okay,
referring to.
I'm sorry.
so that
that's
we'll
okay, you
need
would
to borrow
know.
money for that demo, so if there's any
It's
remaining money.
possible. That would be a decision that we would have to run past bond council to affirm. They'll be the ones that will have to say, yes, that's within the definitions of what we've written it for.
Because these
So if
are
it's-
really good interest rates right now, and in a year,
They'll be higher.
right. And so
Attorney Dragney
that's-
may be able to help as well.
I just wanted, so I think you read the description of what the bonds can be used for. Can you just read that again, please?
The proceeds of the notes will be used to finance the demolition, removal, and remediation of the highway trailer building located in the city.
That's it, right? That's what we know we can use the money for.
Well, as I understand, the carriage house, is that the name of the other building that's?
Blacksmith?
Oh,
Blacksmith
I'm sorry,
shop.
Blacksmith shop is structurally, and if that were to be compromised as part of this, I think we could go to do that. If this is a totally separate building than those together, I would need to defer to bond council. I don't want to say it's a definitive. I think you'd have better luck with the blacksmith shop than with the public
Oh,
works.
we're not taking the blacksmith shop down, so
We could
I'm just
definitely,
saying if
yeah,
there was a need
could
for
we
that.
use it then to like do some remediation on the blacksmith shop? I mean, I'm trying to figure out, because if it's so restrictive and we don't use the full amount, and we can't pay it back until 2026, that's not really helping us. You know, if for some reason it comes, if I'm understanding this correctly, say it comes, the total cost is only $600,000, we still have this $170,000 that we can't use on anything else. If I understood what, because the guidelines are so narrow.
We would have to, if you had a new project in use, we would run it past bond council to make sure that they're comfortable with it.
Okay,
So
All right.
that, I don't want to say yes, and I don't want to say no.
okay.
Like I said, I think the blacksmith shop would be something, if that were to be compromised and needed to, as part of this, I think that would be possible. As far as removal of the public works facility, I think that would be difficult. Any unused proceeds you have that you don't have a project that qualifies has to go back to pay debt service. So it's not wasted money. It's money that would just go and you would use it to pay debt service.
Thank you. I had Alderperson Boersma and then Reeves.
And I agree. We don't want to be tying up our money as borrowed money for a period of time. So the question is whether or not we could do that before we actually do that we expand our possibilities before we lock ourselves in tonight. So I would wonder whether or not we could go back and expand it so we stay legal to how we're going to use that money.
I know that RDA President Truel was working with the change order. I don't know the status of where that change order is.
Go ahead.
My recommendation to him was to not sign it until after the council approves borrowing the money tonight.
Thank you.
So I assume he followed that.
Thank
Yeah, I
you.
have not received any change order yet.
Alderperson Reeves.
So sort of along the same line, I guess I'm asking, what are the implications if we said, look, do we need to reword this so that it says something more specifically or less specifically, not the highway trailer building, but the highway trailer complex, and maybe not just demolition, but remediation, renovation, improvement, I don't know, but I am concerned about, or does that start the whole process over? I just would like to get some feedback on the implications.
If the council is uncomfortable with the language in it and wanted to change and expand the definition and to try to get an answer out of bond council, I highly doubt I'm going to be able to reach them this evening, and the bid is only good until tomorrow morning. So if you don't award it as it's written and presented this evening, we would start over. And at that point, would try to see if we could keep the same opinion, et cetera, to not have to go back through the process, or else you'd have to start the process and going to a state trust fund loan.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Duranzik.
So, in your experience, the Stoughton Highway Trailer Complex includes the blacksmith shop, okay? So that is the building that we would like to preserve. So that is part of the complex. So in your experience, if in fact we don't end up using all of this money and say we need to do not environmental remediation, but structural remediation, do you think that it would be very likely that the bond council would approve that then?
Is the additional remediation being caused because of your removal of the highway
That
trailer
could be
building?
very possible because two of the walls are, part of, a couple of the walls are part of the blacksmith shop. So that might be, it may make it more structurally unsound because we have been removing some of that.
I believe we would be able to, if it were something that needed to be remediated because of work on the highway trailer building, I would say they would have a better than 50-50 chance. I'm not an attorney, but I think that bond counsel, if it's associated with the highway trailer building, it would work. If it is something just, there's nothing that different for the blacksmith shop, and it's just there's surplus $50,000 and you want to improve the blacksmith shop, I think the answer would be clearly no.
Okay. Alderperson Boersma.
If possible, Matt Dragney, could you give us an opinion about this on the fly?
Well, I can't answer the question that was just asked definitively any better than Joe can, but I'm trying to understand what I think the worst case scenario is, and I'll lay it out for you as I see it, and then maybe you could let me know, Joe, if you think I'm right. So it seems to me that the concern is that you sell this debt, now you've borrowed $700,000 that you can use for the process of demolishing the highway trailer building and remediating the site. Then your wish comes true and you get a $500,000 grant that you could use for the same purpose. So you say, okay, I'm going to now use this grant money to plow into the project. What does that mean with respect to the $700,000? I think what that means is that you can use that $700,000 that you've borrowed now to repay debt service on it, but you're essentially going to pay interest on dollars for a number of years that you wouldn't have had to pay interest on had you not borrowed the money. But you've got a significant chicken and egg problem here, right? Because you're poised to move forward with signing a change order, to move forward with demolition. That won't be signed if this isn't approved tonight, if this borrowing, because you don't have any other funding. So if you want to move forward now, you've got to approve this. If you're prepared to say, well, we don't have to move forward now, we can wait and see if we get grant money, then you can wait. I think that's the worst case scenario, but maybe, Joe, do you have any other thought on that?
Well, the worst case scenario is, as I've heard it, you have a change order that's going to says it's $700,000. That's the contract you're signing, and you have $750,000. So you're worried about $50,000 of money that might not be spent unless this change order it could come in under the $700,000 as estimated. I would also suggest an option then is if there's concern about the wordage, why not change the verbiage for your grant application to apply to the blacksmith building? That would eliminate any potential. You would say, we spent the bond money or the prom note money on the highway trailer building, and we're going to use the rest of the money for the blacksmith building, whatever's left. You could address it that way.
Alderperson O'Connor.
Joe, what's the total interest paid over the life of the loan?
Total interest is $201,337.
Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm going to argue both sides of this thing. I mean, this is the problem you get when you put the cart before the horse. And this was discussed before. Let's rush into something and then rush into a problem. That's basically what we've done. On the other hand, I can't imagine, us borrowing money, paying interest, and then all of a sudden we don't need all of that, and having somebody tell us, well, too bad, you got to just sit on that money now. You can't use it for anything else. I can't imagine why you can't use it for other purposes on that site, unless the meaning of that language is that restrictive. I mean, it's probably something we need to find out before we approve this.
Thank you. Additional comments? Council President Swadlin.
Thank you, Your Honor. So we talked about the grants. When are they due and when will they be awarded?
I don't know. I wish Scott was here or Gary Becker was here, because I know he was working on it. Tammy, do you know?
No, I hadn't been given any idea of dates.
I mean,
I know that they can be applied for now, and Gary's working on it, but he's also in Ireland now, so we can't figure that out.
I guess I'm not really interested in waiting around to make a decision on this. We've already made a decision that, we have a building that is a public safety concern that needs to come down. And I think the rest of this, I'd obviously rather sort it out on the front end than the back end, but I'm pretty confident that we'll find a way to use the money, and the grant hasn't even been written yet, and I'm not real interested in waiting 6 months to move forward on this project. I think, as a community, we're ready to go forward on this thing, so I still support the motion.
Thank you. Alderperson
I never
Hirsch.
said it was going to be 6 months. I said it could be due now. I'm also not, I don't like words being put in my mouth. I'm just trying to save the taxpayers money and let them know. And so if it's going to be restrictive, is that the best way? I'm not saying that I'm for or against it right now. I'm just trying to explore our options, and so that we can make a best informed decision. And so I think we just need to look at it all, know that the wording is very restrictive, and that we might be stuck paying a good sum of interest if we don't use it all. That's all I'm saying.
Tammy.
The only thing that I'd point out is that the feds are increasing the interest rates. It's not going to help us at all. It's going to cost more money. If it's truly something that we are interested in doing, unfortunately, costs are only going to increase for the demolition of the building, because that would, I would assume, mean that our current rate would be changed. And then you would also have new borrowing costs if we go out to borrow, as well as not as favorable interest rates. So that's something to think about too.
Thank you. Alderperson Boersma.
I just wonder why it would be bad to wait for maybe the next council session when we have more information, and the information that I'd like to have would be that we use it on the general project rather than the one specific building.
I think what I heard Joe say was that, if we don't approve this tonight, you do start over with the borrowing. And maybe the grant is what can be adjusted to not cover just the highway trailer building, but the RDA redevelopment area. And that would give that a broader scope. Possibility.
Well, that's the reason why I raised it in the first place. I mean, can we use that money for it or not use it for it? And I wasn't sure after reading the notes for tonight's session whether or not we could, and that's the reason I raised it. And I think it's a legitimate point that we got to be a bit careful about our finances.
Yep, good point. And that it's very directed toward that highway trailer building demolition. I'm not seeing further questions. If we're comfortable, we'll go ahead and vote by roll call.
Swadley.
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Johnson.
No.
Reeves.
Aye.
Majewski.
No.
Engelberger.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
O'Connor.
Aye.
Duranzik.
Aye.
Bartlett.
Aye.
Hirsch.
Aye.
Motion carries on a vote of 9-2.
Court decision.
Who else voted no? Okay, Resolution 55. Thank you, Joe, for all your help.
No, was not.
Resolution 55 of 2018 comes from both our Public Works Committee and our Finance Committee. So we'll start with Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome.
55, 2018, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to reallocate unspent capital funds to be used for 2018 road construction and enter into an agreement with Madrell Excavating LLC for 2018 street and utility construction contract 1-2018. Finance Committee met tonight and recommends approval unanimously. I so move.
Thank you. There's a motion by O'Connor.
Second.
Second by Bartlett. Alderperson O'Connor.
Brett can probably talk a little bit more to it, but this is to cover a project that was bid out a couple years ago, and it was amount of money allocated was inadequate, and so we're having a funding source come to fruition.
This is contract 1-2018 that was actually bid out about 2 weeks ago for Vernon Street, Christie Lane, Forest Street, and Jurtson. And this was actually programmed in the CIP in 2016. So we got 2-year borrowing, and the funds in that CIP were not adequate to fund this project because of the scope of the project had changed over the 2-year period. And what we did is we met with staff and we looked at past projects that were complete, and we want to take those funds and reallocate those funds to the 2018 street reconstruction CIP. And I will add that we also, part of this resolution is to award the contract to Madrell Excavating out of Monroe. They were within $60,000 of our consulting engineers' estimated cost for the project. So we're comfortable that we're getting a good price for this project, and we'd like to move forward with that.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Alderperson Boersma.
I am on Public Works, and we talked about this last time. I just want everybody to know that there was some concern at the level of the Public Works meeting that there was only one bid for this project. So the question came up, and it came actually from me as to whether or not you could go back to the original person who gave the bid and try to get it lowered or rebid it or whatever. And I think it was a consensus of Public Works that we go through with it, but recognizing that it was only one person who responded to the bid, which raised some concerns on my part.
And legally, we can't go back to the bidder and ask them to rebid based on certain criteria. Also, the bidding climate right now, not just in Stoughton, but the whole area, is very competitive. It's a supply and demand issue. There's a lot of construction going on in the area, and there's only so many contractors to bid on these types of construction. With the $1.7 million project, with it being within $60,000 of what our the Strand's estimate was, is pretty good. So we feel very comfortable that this is a good price for the project.
Thank you, Brett. Further comments or questions? We'll vote by roll call.
Bartlett.
Aye.
Hirsch.
Aye.
Swadley.
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reeves.
Aye.
Majewski.
Aye.
Engelberger.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
O'Connor.
Aye.
Duranzik.
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Resolution 56 of 2017 comes from our Cemetery Board and Public Works Committee.
Thank
Alderperson
you.
Jensen.
Move to table this until next meeting.
Okay. Is there a second on that?
Second.
Motion by Jensen, second by O'Connor to table.
Is there a reason?
Oh, yeah, there's some additional information that we want to add to it. Well, it's regarding the plots and the number of people that we can put in each plot.
Sure.
So we want to clarify that.
Sure, thank you. All those in favor of tabling this motion, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no? That motion carries. Resolution 57 of 2018 comes from our Parks and Rec Committee as well as our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 57, 2018, awarding the bid for the solar panels at the Nordic Ridge Park Shelter. Finance Committee met tonight and approved it unanimously. I move to approve.
Second.
Motion by O'Connor, second by Duranzik. Alderperson O'Connor.
This is awarding the low bid to Full Spectrum Solar in the amount of $10,995 for putting the solar panels up at Nordic Ridge. Money to come through Parkland Development Funds.
Thank you. Dan, welcome.
Sure. So the project was bid out, and the bid pack was put together by Corey Neely from WPPI, and put the spec so that it would generate enough power to generate for the whole year to power the shelter and the splash pad at the park. We had two bids. One was a local bid with a company in Stoughton, but they weren't within the 5% threshold they needed, according to our purchasing policy, to award them the bid. It was very close, though. So the bid came under budget, and we received a grant also from WPPI for $3,148, which makes the project cost to under $8,000 total.
Very nice. Thank you, Dan. Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. I guess the only thing I would question is do we have any policies for consideration of local contractors as opposed to, I mean, when it's, what was the difference in the bid? Very small.
It was over 5%. So if
it was over 5%.
Yeah. If
what,
it's
what was the dollar amount?
So
14,000.
It was like 5.25%. So it was very close to the 5%.
Mm-hmm.
But if the purchasing policy states if a project's under $15,000 and it's not within that 5% for local, that we have to award the low bid.
Okay, so you're going by the policy?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay.
Absolutely. Yep, thank you. Other comments or questions? We'll vote by roll.
Hirsch.
Aye.
Swadley.
Aye.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reeves.
Aye.
Majewski.
Aye.
Engelberger. Jensen.
Aye.
Connor.
Aye.
Bartlett.
Aye.
Duranzik.
Aye.
We're missing someone. Are we missing
Boersma.
someone?
Aye.
Thank you. That motion carries unanimously. Resolution 58 of 2015 also comes from our Parks and Recreation Committee and our Finance Committee this evening. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 58, 2018, resolution to purchase electric locks for the Nordic Ridge Park Shelter. Park and Rec met and approved 5-0, and Finance Committee met tonight, approved unanimously. I move approval.
Thank you. It was a very quiet motion to
Oh, I'm
approve.
sorry.
Thank you very much.
Second.
Is there a second? Second by Bartlett. Thank you. Alderperson O'Connor.
This is to place locks on the on the park shelters and uniformly throughout the park features.
Thank you. Dan.
So there was when the park shelter was opened up, there were a few items that were overlooked. These included tables, electric locks, and steel doors. So the steel doors were purchased as an emergency item because the shelter really houses the mechanicals for the splash pad, and a lot of money was at risk if something was going to be vandalized. The tables, we raised funds to purchase all the tables, so they've been ordered as well. We have a little bit of money remaining, $4,800. The locks are $3,368 for the two sets, which would be the two bathrooms. So what it allows us to do is make it so the doors are automatically locked and opened during park hours. It prevents overnight vandalism occurring in the parks. This is like a standard item we have in all of our different park shelters that we have. So we would use the $336 remaining to cover the electric clocks that are in the park's budget, and the remaining money would go back into the park development fund.
Thank you, Dan. Comments? Alderperson Boersma.
Thank you, Henry. So if I rent the park building and then need to get in at different times or whatever, and then get it locked and all that, what do I do?
So the doors are open to the general public during park hours. So we're open from 6 o'clock to 10 p.m. And it's up to scheduling by Parks Maintenance to do the actual when they're open and closed. But if you're renting a shelter, you still would want to get a key from us because it allows you to access the utility rooms if you had like Nescos or things like that where you could wash them out. And that's closed to the general public.
So it has an automatic key and it also has a manual key?
That'd be for a separate room.
Oh, what?
That'd be for a separate room where you'd pick up a key if you're renting a park shelter. The general public, the doors are open, the park shelter is open to the general public for the restroom facilities.
That would include toilet facilities and water?
From 6 a.m. until 10 p.m.
Yep.
And use of the park is prohibited outside of those hours. That's what I understood Dan to say, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Further questions or comments? Alderperson Johnson.
Hi, Dan. So this is standard for other parks that you have, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll vote by roll.
Swadley?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Reeves?
Aye.
Majewski?
Aye.
Engelberger?
Aye.
Jensen?
Aye.
O'Connor?
Aye.
Bartlett?
Aye.
Hirsch?
Aye.
Duranzik?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Resolution 59 of 2018 comes from our Parks and Recreation Committee and Finance this evening. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 59, 2018, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to enter into an agreement with Ayers and Associates for Parks and Open Space Plan. Park and Recreation Committee met and approved 5-0, and Finance Committee met tonight and approved unanimously as well, and I move approval.
Motion by O'Connor, second by Bartlett. Alderperson O'Connor.
This is to have Ayers and Associates do a comprehensive review of our parks and make recommendations.
Did you want to share additional information, Dan?
Sure. So the comprehensive open Parks and Open Space Plan is really the roadmap will lead us for the next 5 years as far as what we want to do with the park system. You know, this is a much broader scope than what was done in the past, and it's going to give us a lot of good information and data that we can use to move forward. Ayers and Associates, you know, Blake Tyson's the project manager for this, and I've always heard good things about him in my time as working in Parks and Recreation, and I've got recommendations from him from other park directors around the Dane County area.
Thank you, Dan. Comments or questions? We'll vote by roll.
Swadley?
Aye.
Boersma?
Aye.
Johnson?
Aye.
Reeves?
Aye.
Majewski?
Aye.
Engelberger? Jensen?
Aye.
O'Connor?
Aye.
Bartlett?
Aye.
Hirsch?
Aye.
Duranzik?
Aye.
That motion carries unanimously. Resolution 60 of 2018 comes from Community Affairs Council Policy. Alderperson Reeves.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 60-2018, resolution authorizing the Stoughton Lions Club to name the pickleball court at Mant Park, and Community Affairs and Policy approved 4-0 on March 19th.
Second.
Motion by Reeves, second by Duranzik. Alderperson Reeves.
So, in general, the policy is that an organization that contributes 50% or more would have naming rights, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, Dan, but the Lions Club contributed, I believe, was it 50 or 20,000?
20,000.
And then they applied for a grant to the Bryant Foundation, did the lead work, and so essentially we felt that $30,000, they met that obligation, and so we were comfortable letting them name it.
And they're choosing to call it the Lions Club Pickleball Court. Seems appropriate. Comments or questions? All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Motion carries. Resolution 61 of 2018 comes from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 61, authorizing and directing the proper city officials to enter into an agreement with Harvest Farms LLC for the third phase of construction of the Nordic Ridge Plat. Finance Committee met tonight and approved unanimously. I move approval.
Second.
Motion by O'Connor, second by Duranzik. Alderperson O'Connor.
Well, this is expanding the third phase, and perhaps Rodney would be able to provide more detail.
previous two phases, we've had similar agreements in place. This is to allow for the construction of the previously platted area identified in the document as Phase 3. Principally single-family in this phase. There are, I believe, 6 duplex parcels and 1 multifamily parcel. Those have already been previously rezoned. This just allows for the public improvements to take place, and the security and the agreement terms are outlined in the document.
Thank you, Rodney. Comments or questions? We'll vote by roll call.
Johnson.
Aye.
Reeves.
Aye.
Maskey.
Aye.
Engelberger.
Aye.
Jensen.
Aye.
O'Connor.
Aye.
Bartlett.
Aye.
Hirsch.
Aye.
Swadley.
Aye.
Boersma.
Aye.
Duranzik.
Aye. That motion carries unanimously. Resolution 62 of 2018 also comes from our Finance Committee. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. Resolution 62, 2018, authorizing, directing proper city officials to contract for a building condition report for the building located at 207 Forest Street, McFarland State Bank. Finance Committee met and approved 4-1, and I move for approval.
Thank you.
Second.
Motion by O'Connor, second by Swadley. Alderperson O'Connor first, and then Duranzik.
Okay, we met and authorized $3,000 or recommended to council after given direction by the city council to review it further. We're saying $3,000 to conduct a building evaluation and money to be taken from contingency. I was the lone opposer simply because I don't think that we've shown that there's a need, and if there is a need, if this building meets that need.
Thank you. Alderperson Duranzik.
Yes, I've read through the material, and the bank talks about there being faults in the building, and yet I read nowhere in our materials that enumerate what these faults are. So, through any of the committee meetings, has anybody gotten an idea of what that means? What's the problems with the building?
Sure. Rodney or Pat?
Well, I think that's what we're authorizing the money to do, is determine what that is. The bank itself wasn't comfortable with trying to define what all the problems may or may not be, and a lot of it depends on what our use would be. So that's what this money would be authorizing somebody to do, is find out what the difficulties are with the building.
Okay. Thank
Excuse me, but you're telling me that the bank knows what the faults are, what the problems are with this building, and they won't tell us, and we're going to have to spend $3,000 to figure it out?
Well, I don't think that's exactly what I said. I think what I said was that they would not feel comfortable in delineating all what issues may or may not be, and so that's why we're authorizing the money.
If they were to sell this building, they would have to enumerate all of that to the buyer.
It may be slightly different. I have Alderperson Bartlett, Johnson, and Reeves. Alderperson Bartlett.
I thought part of the reason we tabled this was also to look at future uses of the building. What are the allowed uses? I know their statement here says its sole use is for construction of a parking facility. And why would we do a building inspection on a building that we have to tear down? So what has changed with the uses that we're allowed to use for this building?
That was another question I had.
Sure. Pat, you can start, and then we can
Well,
always back you up, help you
They
out.
expanded what that legitimate use could be to essentially any public benefit. And so if the public benefit for us would be to take over the building and use it for a city office building or share it with the bank, those are some of the things that we would use it for.
Thank
Is
you.
it only
Matt?
public facilities, like public offices, or?
Public uses, I think, is what they delineated.
Right. Matt, did you want to make a
So
comment?
I'm just question, so if the city wanted to sell it couldn't sell it?
No.
No. Okay.
No. I had Alderperson Johnson, Reeves, and then Swadley.
You said Johnson?
Johnson,
Yeah,
yes.
okay, thank you, Your Honor. This is to answer probably your questions, Denise. For real estate, they probably do not feel comfortable making any claims, because if they make claims this way or that way, they might be held liable. So they're probably just trying to, like, if you want to buy a house, you get an inspector. And they're probably trying to, just stand back and, because they're not in the business of buildings. So that's why they're probably doing that.
Thank you. Alderperson Reeves.
So I was going to say something very similar to Alderperson Johnson, because we did, what I heard them saying a number of times is that that building no longer suited their needs. And we asked a number of times that, is there anything specifically, and we did look for a building report, but I would agree that I think they don't. I mean, we're not selling the property. It would be a gift. So it's not the same as, and it's in terms of what they'd be required at the point of sale. And the other piece was that we did ask staff to put together some ideas about what they might be able to use the building for. And I know Rodney and some other folks in leadership provided, some of their current space needs and long-term needs. And a number of us also felt that our goal is to grow. We have no community space, and that it's a lot less expensive to renovate a building potentially than build one. So we felt like this was a good investment to see what options might be available for long-term space needs. So,
thank you, Council President Swedley.
Thank you, Your Honor. So the conversation has kind of evolved. Initially, they approached us and wanted to give us the building and have it removed, and they wanted to build a new building and then use the old location, the old building location for a parking lot. And so as we had conversations, we said, well, how about if we were to use the building for municipal use? And they seemed to be open to that idea. And then we expanded that conversation recently to say, well, if we did, would you be interested in being a tenant instead of putting up a new building? So at that point, we had to make a decision if we're going to go forward with that. We really need to know what kind of shape the building is in before we acquire it. In one of their documents from one of their contractors regarding a parking lot proposal they had, really the only thing it's specified in there is that the boiler was newer, which I'm not really sure what that means, but that's the only indication as far as the mechanicals of what kind of condition they may be in. So the idea would be is to have a building inspector go in there and inspect the building, let us know whether or not the building needs some major work, roof, boiler or furnace, windows. So we know that if we acquire the building, how much we'd have to invest in the building just to make it so it would be usable. Then on top of that, potentially there would be more investment to remodel it, which we wouldn't have to do right away. We could budget for that in future years. And the idea would be is once we get the inspection and get the information, we know whether or not we want to go forward. If we do, then we'd have the city attorney get involved in the process at that point. And we talked about that at finance. It would be premature to start talking, writing an offer and acquiring the building until we knew we actually wanted it based on the condition that it's in. So that's kind of the whole rationale behind this. As Alderperson Reeves said, as the community grows, we'll be looking for some space. There was an internal survey done with the department heads about immediate needs, and then there was also an email that went out about department plans in the future. And if you put those two documents together, I think you'll see that there are several potential uses long-term for the building. That will be a discussion in itself. I know that, based on my experience, if you have the space, somebody will find good use for it, and I'm sure that the same thing would happen in this situation. And it would be a lot more cost-effective to acquire the building for nothing than it would be to put up another building. The location may or may not be an issue for some folks. There isn't a ton of parking, but there's enough potentially for staff if we were to choose to go forward with this.
Just wanted to clarify that you danced it a little bit. A building inspector wouldn't be the city's building inspector. It would be someone doing a building conditions report. So just clarifying, I didn't want folks to think that we were going to send our own building inspector over there. That wouldn't work for this type of a purpose. Alderperson Duranzik.
Yeah, I have a question then for the attorney. They said that they want to gift this to us, okay?
Donate it.
Donate it.
Right.
And so, if somebody gives you a gift, basically you should be able to do what you want with the building, correct?
No.
You can, it's not unusual, I think, particularly when it comes to land that's donated to a community, for there to be restrictions attached. So I think it is possible for them to make a donation that is subject to restrictions. The city does not have to agree to accept the donation under those terms, can always say, no, thank you. But I think it is possible to structure a donation in a way that is restricted.
Okay.
Okay, further comments or questions? Okay, we'll vote by roll.
Wadley,
Aye.
Boersma,
Aye.
Johnson,
Aye.
Reeves,
Aye.
Mieski,
Aye.
Engelberger,
Aye.
Jensen,
Aye.
O'Connor,
No?
Bartlett,
Aye.
Hirsch,
Aye.
Duranzik.
Aye.
That motion carries on a vote of 10 to 1. Ordinance 11 of 2018 comes from our Public Safety Committee for a first reading. Alderperson Jensen.
Thank you. Ordinance 11, 2018, amending Chapter 70-176, Parent 61 of the City of Stoughton Municipal Code, relating to parking restrictions on Veteran Road between the intersection of U.S. Highway 51 and Vernon Street. And this is first reading.
All right. Comments or questions on a first reading? Otherwise, it will be back in 2 weeks for further discussion. Alderperson Johnson.
Thank you, Your Honor. I was at the public safety meeting when this came up, and Chief, you had mentioned that the people at the apartments were having trouble with be able to see coming in and out, correct?
Yeah, on the west side of Veterans Road.
Okay. And I think since that time, we got a letter from the owner of the apartments that was...
That was actually the other side of the roadway.
Okay, all right. So, I just think we need to do a little bit more looking into who really wants this and who doesn't. Right now, the bike path is kind of just a small section, so I'm concerned if we vote to put the bike path in, I want to make sure that we reach everybody. And I know, Rodney, you had a public meeting, and did people come and voice their opinion on this at all, or was there a no-show?
Actually, we've had 2 public meetings on this particular project. The city hosted one in December, of which nobody came on this entire stretch to talk about the Veterans Road work project. The public informational meeting that was last week Tuesday, which the county held, we had one adjacent property owner come and attend. Happens to be the business on the corner of 51 and Main. Didn't raise any significant objections, understood the project as it was proceeding. No other adjacent residents to the project in this one block segment attended the meeting.
All right, thank you.
Not to say there aren't questions, but they weren't in attendance.
Excellent, thank you very much.
Thank you. Resolution 63 of 2018 comes from our Landmarks Committee. Council President Swadley.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move to designate the building historically known as South School on 1009 Summit Avenue as a local landmark.
Second.
It's a motion by Swadley, second by Engelberger. Alderperson Swadley.
So as you heard from Peggy Berrigan tonight, kind of the history behind getting this building landmarked, locally landmarked. Everybody that showed up to the Landmarks Commission meeting that night was definitely in support of doing this. Many of them thought that it had already been done. Some of us thought it had already been done. So in order to make sure that we have this on record, I would encourage everyone to support it.
Comments? Alderperson Jensen?
Yeah, just one question, if I could, for Mike. Your property, correct?
Partially.
Just wanted to make sure that everyone was on board that lives there. They were all in, just so everybody knows that everybody that was living there is okay with it.
Thank you. Alderperson Engelberg?
Thank you, Your Honor. You know, I don't know what everybody knows, but there was a public hearing that was noticed to everybody, I think 300 feet around the building. This has been discussed. I'm the president of our condo association. This has been discussed at our condo meetings for the last year or so because we knew it was coming up. We've had other issues where landmarks, we were applying for a grant. One of the conditions of the grant is that you have to be, it has to be a local landmark. And yeah, I have heard no negative input from anybody regarding landmark status. This building also has been on the National Historic Register since, I believe, 1986. Is that right, Peggy? Yeah. And like what was stated a couple times, everybody thought this building was a local landmark. It's just that they couldn't find the records of it. And this is just cementing the process for that. So haven't heard any negative comments about it.
Thank you. Alderperson Johnson?
Thank you, Your Honor. I was on Landmarks when we started to discover that some of the ones that were on the designated historical list, it just wasn't, the paperwork wasn't completed. And I think at different times in the city, people did things a little bit differently, but it was always assumed. So we're just doing the paperwork to follow through on what should have been done years and years ago.
Thank you. Without further comments, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Agenda item 19 is a discussion and possible referral to amend city ordinances to provide appropriate standards for minimum maintenance and to determine where such standards apply in the city of Stoughton. And this was referred to us by the Landmarks Commission. So I guess we'll start out with Vice President Swadley.
So as we were directed at Landmarks to look at our ordinance related to historic buildings, Chapter 38 and 78, one of the things that surfaced is that we felt that we needed to investigate whether or not the council wanted to have stronger minimum maintenance standards, not only to historic buildings, but to all buildings in the city of Stoughton. So Attorney Dregney had provided us some information from some work that he had done previously that gave some real specific criteria for what we would be looking for from whether it was a homeowner or a business owner in Stoughton. So the discussion tonight is, you know, whether or not the council wants to go forward in adopting some new standards for minimum maintenance, and if we do, what committee or commission or who should be charged with working on that. Certainly Attorney Dregney may have some thoughts. Peggy is here if you have any questions for her. She certainly was, you know, chairing all the meetings where this topic came up, and Attorney Dregney was there for quite a few of them as we worked on the ordinances.
Sure. Why don't we start out with Rodney, if that's okay?
Sure.
I would suggest Public Works be involved in the role. Public Works has some oversight of our department. While we've talked about code enforcement and the need for potentially some additional hours to make that be more of a priority, this certainly seems like an area where we would be involved in some fashion. So I think that would be probably an appropriate referral.
Right, I agree. I'd also like to hear a little bit from Attorney Dregney about, there are some new bills before the legislature talking about minimum maintenance standards. I think the ones that they're discussing at this point specifically deal with landmarks commissions or landmarks buildings.
And I have not had the opportunity to review any of that new legislation yet, so I'm not sure how it might affect things, but
sure.
Clearly that would have to be considered if to determine whether it would have some impact on our authority locally.
Right, okay. Did you have anything else you'd like to share about this
I guess the only other thing I would say is I think the one thing I shared with the committee, the Landmarks Commission, was an ordinance prepared and approved by the Village of Oregon specifically for their downtown historic district. That they chose to develop some minimum maintenance standards specifically for that district, and that was in response to concerns about particularly some structural problems that had developed with some buildings that they felt should have been prevented through better maintenance standards. So I shared those with the commission, and they're rather focused. I haven't shared any other examples of, say, citywide property maintenance ordinances that you might consider, and I don't have real personal experience with that. I do know that I remember being told once that the city of, I think it was Sheboygan, perhaps, did something like that and made a real effort to try and use that to improve kind of their housing stock in the city. So what I've provided is rather focused, and if you wanted to go beyond that, we'd have to get out there and see what we could find.
Thank you, Matt. Is the Alderperson Johnson, Duranzik, and then Jensen? Did you have your hand? No? Alderperson Duranzik.
Yes, I think my question is what is the difference? What are we looking at that would be different than our minimum maintenance standards that we presently have?
I think Rodney's best to.
Yeah, I think you'll find that there's some areas that can be bolstered up in our minimum maintenance standards. We've touched on them on occasion, in a very minor manner. It certainly seems appropriate to look at them and revisit them and look at some of the peer communities to see how they better address some of the issues that we're aware of.
Okay.
Thank you. Alderperson Jensen, and then Engelberger.
Thank you. I'd be in favor of looking at this. I think it's a good idea to have some expanded standards, but I do have two concerns. One would be consideration for the affordability aspect of it for the homeowner, and the other one would be for regarding the historic districts. I would want to see these standards be grandfathered in so that somebody who owns a property does not have this just put upon them. It would be for whoever the next owner would be. I think that would be the appropriate way to do it. Other than that, I'd like to see us look at this.
There's also some new discussion on the legislature talking about landlord inspection and maintenance and those types of things. So it's clearly a topic that's being discussed broadly right now. I had Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. I think this is something we definitely need to do. If you look at our ordinances, we did discuss this slightly or a little bit in Planning Commission, not only in the context of historic buildings, but any building within the city. When you look at our ordinances, we do have some strict standards on making sure your grass is cut and those types of things, but we really don't have much if your building is falling down. Now, when you ride down Main Street and you see a house that's falling down, I don't think that's something that we want to be proud of, or I think that's something that this is a lawful society. We need to have rules and regulations, and we need to make sure that people take care of their property. And if it goes beyond a certain point, then we have to chase them to make sure that it gets fixed up. We've had houses in this city where coons are getting inside the building, and inside interstitial spaces and everything else, and that's something you just can't have. Right now we have buildings a half a block off Main Street with no roof on it. A lot of people might not know that, but go take a look. We need to do something about this, and I would actually make a motion to refer this to the Planning Commission and then to the Public Works, so the Public Works can get it back to the council to vote on something.
There's a motion to make a referral to the Plan Commission and then on to Public Works. Is there a second? That motion dies for lack of a second. Alderperson Majewski, and then Boersma.
Question for landmarks.
Peggy?
What? The chair of the landmarks?
I warned you.
Ready? What, this was referred to by your commission. What depth were you considering for maintenance? I mean, what type of detail? How deep of an ordinance were you looking at, considering, or thinking about? What was your mindset?
Well, I think that's part of why this is here on your agenda, because we felt like we needed some guidance for what does the city want. This is, as far as Landmarks Commission is concerned, this is an issue that is not about historic buildings. I think what Alder Engelberger was saying is correct. This is about all of the buildings in our communities and making sure that people come to our community and they don't see buildings that are being neglected and derelict and falling down. And so Landmarks Commission thinks that it's a good idea to have minimum maintenance standards. I think it's just a matter of needing some direction. I'm not sure that the Landmarks Commission is the place to develop those. It would be probably a good idea to for us to be involved in the process. We can certainly participate in the discussion and consult have a point of view, but we're probably not the group to develop these maintenance standards. And so it was just really to get some feedback from council about what you want to do and where these should come from, which commission or which committee should take this on and provide some guidance.
Thank you. Is that all? Alderperson Majewski?
Yes.
All right. I have Alderperson Boersma, Reeves, and O'Connor.
Thank you, Your Honor. I have been attending as many Landmarks Commission meetings as I can. In one of the more recent ones, the committee, and I'm not on the Landmarks Commission, was standards, but also whether people had a right to appeal decisions that were made by either the city or landmarks or whatever, and how long they had to appeal, and what about people who couldn't afford it, potentially if an older couple had something they couldn't afford to do, what would the city do to maybe assist in helping restore or put something up to minimum standards? I think it's a pretty complicated issue, and I think it is important that we really look at this one carefully, because we don't want to overburden people to do this, but we want to keep our city beautiful. So it's a complicated issue, and I think Rodney's idea about maybe having Public Works do some work on it, maybe having more than one committee look at this whole issue is a good idea, because it's a fairly complicated long-term issue. I mean, and do we fine people, if they don't keep it up to minimum standards, or do we give them a ticket, or do we slap them on the wrist, or do we help them with it, or I mean, it's a very complicated issue, and I'm not sure that we can vote on anything like this until we have some real thought given to this whole process.
Well, there certainly needs to be some balance between having standards that are so strict that it's a hardship for people who truly are unable to meet those standards, there's a difference, a balance between having that as one extreme and the other extreme having standards that are so loose that, you can drive down the street and you can see these buildings where property owners are not taking care of their property and, sort of willfully letting them fall apart or deteriorate or not being responsible. And so, I think the point about other aspects of the community that are monitored and people are given citations for not maintaining their sidewalks or their their yards and so where is their consistency? Why are we focusing on those things and not looking at it holistically? And so I think it's just really trying to find a balance between very restrictive and where we are now, which seems to be pretty loose.
Just to follow up, I work with a lot of elders in Stoughton, and so an elder couple can buy a house when they're in their 50s, or that's a landmark, and they have plenty of money to keep it up for a while. But you'll see a number of buildings in town, I can't think of landmarks, but other buildings where you'll have somebody where they've done well for a long time, but then they run out of money, they run out of energy, and they run out of assets, other assets to be able to keep a building up. And it seems like it's got to be some kind of cooperative effort that is not there to hurt somebody, but actually to help them in maintaining a building. Sometimes they have no relatives whatsoever. I mean, so I kind of feel for people in this position of owning a place that they can't keep up, and they really can't sell it because that may be the only place that they can live. So I think we got to be a bit benevolent in this whole thing and really think it out, because otherwise we could hurt people.
And solutions can certainly be creative. There isn't just one way to do this. It doesn't always have to be punitive. It can be a community effort. If it means volunteer organizations have certain times during the year where they go to those homeowners and they help them with maintenance. So, I think that the potential is there to have creative solutions. We're not restricted to, just one path that's
some of the
punitive.
churches are even doing that. I mean, that they'll say, we're going to donate some time, or United Way, or whatever, to help people in these kind of situations. And if we can utilize those resources, I think that as a social worker, I think this is really something we should do. And so it's not just cut and dry. That's what I'm just saying. It's got to be benevolent, and it's got to be taking people's situation into account. There are some people who might just say, we don't care, but there are other people who just need help in this whole process.
Thank you, Sid. Always more complicated than it seems first off, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Alderperson Reeves, O'Connor, and then Johnson.
So I do think Alderperson Boersma raises some valid points, which is why we need a commission, to work on this. But I also think that there's some best practices out there, and for comparison's sake, we owned we haven't really talked much about rental properties, but that I would say has been on my radar since I moved here. We owned a house in La Crosse, but we were not living in town. We had to have an in-town property manager. I had to pay every single year. I filled out an application before I could even buy that house and make it a rental. And then when I did some renovation, there was an inspector there within about 10 days, which I paid for. And they, told me whether the work was met code and all that stuff. And then when I sold it, I had to pay $130 for some guy to come around with something to make sure all my windows didn't leak. And I couldn't sell it until I had a new window put in because one of them was leaking because his gadget said so. So I think that we could start with the low-hanging fruit and look at some of the rental properties and, so I'll definitely support this.
Thank you. Alderperson O'Connor.
Thank you, Mayor. I think we're all pretty much in agreement that this is probably a good direction to go in. I like Michael Engelberger's suggestion that we refer to planning, because I don't think we're going to get all the details here tonight, and I think that would be a good recommendation. If it's not too late, I would second his motion, otherwise I'll make it myself.
Okay, then we need to start over again. So there's a motion by O'Connor.
Was that Public Works? Was it Public Works or Planning?
Planning and planning.
Michael had planning first and then Public Works. And Alderperson O'Connor is referring it to planning. Is there a second to that motion?
Second.
I'm sorry, I heard a couple, but second by Engelberger. Thank you, Peggy. And we have a few more folks yet wishing to speak, so we have a motion on the floor now, which is always good. Alderperson Johnson.
I think Alderperson Reeves just nominated herself to the commission. I agree with Sid, what he's saying about a lot of the elderly, that we should do something. I belong to the Our Old House group, and I've brought that up as far as trying to do a Saturday cleanup and everything like that. But I think what we're really trying to get is just a coordination of what is the minimal expectation of a homeowner. So I think this is a really good idea. Thank you.
Thank you. Alderperson Bartlett.
I also support this. I don't think landmarks is the best place for it. Also, doesn't really come into their purview unless there's major renovation or design changes, which we'll have to determine what percentage of work moves into a larger project rather than just maintenance. I guess I would recommend, I'd rather go to Public Works first and then Planning Commission, and have the landmarks also have a chance to review it. Planning Commission won't really have much role in maintenance until it gets to be a larger project, a renovation or design change. Then it will come to them. Otherwise, they're not going to see these day-to-day maintenance issues. I think Public Works would be the place to go for safety issues and general upkeep. So, so I'm going to support going to Public Works first, and then have a review by Planning, and landmarks at some point would be good. But
Well, there isn't a motion on the floor right now to go to Public Works.
absolutely, yeah.
Are you
You can
making a
that'd be friendly.
amended motion?
Just a question for Rodney. Who does the enforcement?
Planning Department,
But not the Planning Commission.
right.
Yeah, the Planning Department. So that's
I
what you
recommended
meant.
the Public Works be the committee to vet out initially
I'm
the
fine
the
with it.
standards.
That's what you meant,
But
right?
that's-
Do we need to do a amended motion or simply a
Friendly amendment?
friendly amendment?
No such thing.
Okay with that?
I agree with you.
It's an amendment or it's not.
Okay, well,
What do you want to do?
we can amend the motion to refer it to Public Works.
Can I make
Okay.
that amendment?
Sure.
Motion.
I'll second that.
Third it.
Okay, Alderperson Mieski and then Boersma.
I was basically going to mirror what Alder Bartlett said. Planning Commission is not the correct commission for it. They are a zoning commission. They don't really know or understand maintenance issues. I brought this up before in the past. We really do need to have a standing committee for planning issues, not planning zoning issues. I also believe that Landmarks has much more expertise than Planning Commission when it comes to building maintenance and building materials and building techniques. They have much more experience seated on their commission. So I'm in total agreement with the amendment.
So did I hear you second the amendment? Since I moved
Yes, I
right
did.
past that, I thought I heard that. Thank you. Alderperson Boersma.
Yes, Your Honor, I just want to say one more thing about what I had talked about earlier too, and that is that if we do this right, we can increase the value and wealth of our individual places that we're talking about, and we can also potentially increase the wealth for the people who own it. I mean, too. So if people can keep up on their places, so I'm in favor of it. If they can keep up on their places, the value of their properties are going to remain higher, get even higher. So I think it's really a good idea to look at it as a city and not just push it on a property owner either. It's got to be benevolent, but it's got to be done. So.
Thank you. Further comments or questions? Matt, help us
Just
out.
so you all know, if you're curious, the current code maintenance standards are in section 10-317, and they really are almost entirely dedicated to things on the exterior like yards and walkways. There's really only one thing that deals with the building itself, and that basically requires that it be periodically coated with paint or another suitable preservative. But that's about really the only thing that we have right now that speaks to the building itself in a way that, so if you're curious, that's where you can find the current standards.
What number is that again, Matt?
Section 10-317.
It's in the packet.
Oh, it's in your packet, I guess. There also, I'll mention, there's a reference to maintenance in chapter 38, and that just requires that landmarks, those are designated landmarks, be kept in good repair, but it doesn't really, I mean, it's one sentence, basically. It doesn't say a lot.
Okay. Commissioner Bartlett.
I just want to ask Rodney one question. That section 10-315, inspections, are they only initiated when there's a actual complaint? Or when the inspector sees something just out and about? Can he?
For minimum maintenance, it's generally on complaint.
Only on complaint?
For minimum maintenance standards. And as he pointed out, or he might have pointed out, rental properties are the ones that we get the most complaints related to them, where you've got tenants that have issues with those properties that are not meeting the minimum standards.
Thanks, yeah, I definitely support this. Think we need to change some of this wording here.
Thank you. So we'll vote first on the amendment. And the amendment is to have the minimum, I'm not going to say the words right because it didn't really have words to it, did it? But there's amendment to send the discussion about amending city ordinances to provide appropriate standards for minimum maintenance and to determine where such standards apply in the city of Stoughton. The referral is to Public Works. A motion by Alderperson Bartlett and a second by Alderperson Majewski. So we'll vote on the amendment first. All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. So that's an amendment. We still need to go back to the original motion on the floor by Alderperson O'Connor, second by Alderperson Engelberger, to refer this discussion to the Planning Commission.
As amended.
All those in favor?
Public Works now, right?
It's as amended.
Well, we have an amendment, but we have to go back. Remember, we weren't going to have a friendly amendment. We need to have an amendment and then go back to the original.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended.
As amended. That's how you want to do it tonight.
You could withdraw it.
I withdraw it then,
All right, then.
if that's
You
easier.
can do that. All right, and
Still have to vote on
Alderperson
it
Engelberger, we
unless you don't want to do anything with it. Still have to vote on
Withdraw
it.
the motion.
said
and
that.
It's just
You
the
know.
original motion as amended, and that's what we're voting on.
Right,
That's what we should vote on.
okay. Which means that it's going to be referred to Public Works, correct?
Yep.
All right, want to be sure that we all have that in the right way here. All in favor, aye?
Aye.
Opposed, no? Motion carries. All right. Resolution 64 of 2018 comes from our Planning Commission. Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Resolution 64-2018, approving a conditional use permit to allow composting operation at 1101 Collins Road in Stoughton, which is the Public Works facility, and I so move.
Motion by Engelberger. Is there a second?
Second.
Too many seconds. By Bartlett. We'll go. Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you. This is just allowing our, the conditional use for a composting operation at our new Public Works facility, which is pretty much why we bought the extra land for it, so we could do that and other things with it.
Absolutely.
And it was voted on 5-0 by the Planning Commission.
Okay, Alderperson Swadley.
Thank you. So this is going to start this spring? Is that the plan?
I'm not sure if Brett has
Probably
it
not
scheduled for
until
this spring or
next year.
until after the building is completed, I think.
Not
It was.
until,
No, not in the spring, I believe in the fall.
my
You said
understanding,
should
it will
ready by
be
the fall.
next year that it will be used for the public use.
It won't start in the spring.
Oh, won't
It will not
this
start in the spring.
Fall, I believe.
It'll
so.
probably be the fall at the earliest, and it might be next spring.
So until then, we're going to continue to use the current site?
Until this is improved, correct.
We did sign an agreement with Dunkirk.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. Comments or?
And it's not just composting, it's right, it's going to be for bringing trees over.
Marshalling
and,
yard as well,
Yeah, yard waste.
Yep.
Okay, because it says composting, I don't know.
It's considered compost.
Yeah.
So it's everything, yeah, okay.
Yep, all sorts
Not
of.
refrigerators.
No, not refrigerators.
No, we'll just dump them back in the alley.
Not tires. It's getting late, we're getting a little punchy. All right. Further comments or questions about Resolution 64? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Resolution 65 of 2018 comes from our Planning Commission. Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Resolution 65, 2018, approving a certified survey map, Exhibit A, for a side lot line adjustment between 904 Dunkirk and 920 Dunkirk Avenue in Stoughton, and I so move.
Motion by Engelberger.
Second.
Second by Bartlett. Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Rodney, you want to talk about this?
Really, it's just the map, which I tried to get on the screen, and I'm sorry it's not coming up right now. There's a lot line adjustment that allows for this property to expand onto the rear portion of their parcel, and it was a transaction that occurred between the two property owners to allow for the lot line adjustment to occur. This would just solidify it as part of a certified survey map.
And it was approved 5-0 by the Planning Commission.
Correct. Thank you. Comments or questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries. Ordinance 12 of 2018 comes from our Planning Commission for a first reading. Alderperson Engelberger.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ordinance 12, 2018, approving a general development plan amendment at 815 Berry Street for a proposed deck addition and deck conversion to a screen porch, and it's a first reading from the Planning Commission.
Unless there are questions.
Come back next meeting.
Alderperson Boersma.
Yeah, does this involve setbacks or something, or why are we doing this?
I don't believe so. I think it's just an addition of a deck, and it needs to be amended because the ordinance needs to be changed. Rodney, anything different?
Just highlight, this is one of their kind of unique zoning districts. It's a planned development district, and it requires an amendment to the district to, you establish the setbacks based on the plan that's approved, and they're asking to have the plan amended to allow for a deck to essentially to be added onto the rear of the property, converting their existing deck and addition of another deck. You'll see that the actual setback distances are not any less after the proposed addition would be made.
Right, and this will be back in 2 weeks. Resolution 66 of 2018 comes from our Public Works Committee. Alderperson Jensen.
Thank you, Your Honor. Resolution 66, 2018, a resolution to approve the annual report for the municipal separate storm sewer system MS4 permit, and I would so move.
Second.
It's a motion by Jensen, second by Engelberger. Alderperson Jensen.
Yeah, it's an annual report. You have to send it out. I believe the report is in the packet, pretty much self-explanatory.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? All those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. Motion carries.
Move to adjourn.
Oh, come on.
That goes Majewski in a second by Boersma. Sorry, you were just a little late.
Here, I'm gonna push them and push them in. This is too big.
I have to put my
We
last
only have that much fun on. Oh,
First time.
Very last one.
No, it's not.